Your brain is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is that it is doing it at the wrong time, in the wrong context, about the wrong things. And until you understand what anxiety actually is at the neurological level, every technique you try to stop it will feel like pushing against a wall that has no door. Anxiety is not a character weakness. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is your threat detection system working overtime. Your amygdala, the small almond-shaped structure deep in your brain that monitors for danger, does not distinguish between a real threat and an imagined one. It does not know the difference between a predator in the grass and a difficult conversation you are dreading next Tuesday. Both register the same. Both trigger the same cascade of stress hormones, the same racing heart, the same narrowed attention, the same urgent, insistent signal that something is wrong and you need to act now. The signal is ancient. The triggers are modern. And the gap between the two is where anxiety lives. But here is what most people do not know. The brain that generates anxiety is also the brain that can quiet it. And the exercises that follow are not about suppressing the signal. They are about teaching your brain that the emergency is not real, that the system can stand down, that it is safe to reset. Exercise 1. Box breathing. In 2018, neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman at Stanford University published research that has since become one of the most widely referenced findings on the physiology of stress. His work identified that deliberate control of the breath is one of the fastest known ways to shift the nervous system from a state of sympathetic activation, the fight or flight state, to parasympathetic activation, the rest and digest state. Not over hours, not after weeks of practice, in minutes. Box breathing is the structured application of this principle. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. Exhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts. Repeat. The 4-count hold after the exhale is critical. It is the signal to the vagus nerve, the long branching nerve that runs from your brainstem through your chest and abdomen, that the threat has passed, that it is safe to downregulate. 4 rounds, that is all. The physiological shift is measurable within 2 minutes. Exercise 2. Cold water face immersion. This sounds dramatic. It is not. And the mechanism behind it is one of the most reliably documented in the neuroscience of acute stress regulation. The mammalian dive reflex, a hardwired physiological response present in every mammal, is triggered when cold water contacts the face, particularly around the eyes and nose. The response is immediate and involuntary. Heart rate drops. Oxygen is redistributed. The parasympathetic nervous system activates. You do not need to plunge into cold water. You need a bowl of cold water and 30 seconds. Submerge your face. Hold for 20 to 30 seconds if possible. The shift is almost instant. Psychiatrist and researcher Dr. Marcia Linehan, who developed dialectical behavior therapy, included temperature-based interventions in her clinical protocol, specifically because of the speed and reliability of this response. For acute anxiety, for moments when the system is spiking and you need a circuit breaker, nothing works faster. Exercise 3. The physiological sigh. This is the single most efficient breathing pattern for rapidly reducing physiological arousal, and it is something your body already knows how to do. You have done it thousands of times without realizing it. It is the double inhale followed by a long, extended exhale. The inhale through the nose, then a second sharp inhale to fully inflate the lungs, then a slow exhale through the mouth until the lungs are empty. Dr. Jack Feldman at UCLA, one of the leading researchers in respiratory neuroscience, identified that the physiological sigh is the mechanism the body uses to spontaneously regulate CO2 levels and reinflate collapsed alveoli in the lungs. But the secondary effect, the one that matters for anxiety, is the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system through the extended exhale. When the exhale is longer than the inhale, the heart rate slows. The nervous system interprets the long exhale as evidence that the body is safe. 1 to 3 sighs. That is the dose. You can do it anywhere, visibly or invisibly, and the effect is immediate. Exercise 4. Progressive muscle relaxation. Anxiety lives in the body as much as it lives in the mind. When the threat response activates, muscles tense, the jaw tightens, the shoulders rise, the chest constricts. Most people with chronic anxiety are carrying a level of muscular tension they have stopped noticing because it has become their baseline. They do not feel tense because tense is now normal. Progressive muscle relaxation, developed by physician Edmund Jacobson in the 1930s and subsequently validated by decades of clinical research, works by deliberately tensing muscle groups one at a time and then releasing them. The contrast between the tension and the release teaches the nervous system the difference between the two states. Over time, this contrast becomes something you can access without the full protocol. You learn what release feels like, specifically enough to find it on demand. Start at the feet. Tense for 5 seconds. Release completely. Move upward through the body. Calves, thighs, abdomen, chest, hands, arms, shoulders, face. The full sequence takes 10 to 15 minutes. A shortened version targeting the shoulders, jaw, and hands can be done in under 3 minutes and is effective as an acute intervention. Exercise 5. Cognitive defusion. This exercise comes from acceptance and commitment therapy, developed by psychologist Stephen Hayes at the University of Nevada. It targets one of the central mechanisms that keeps anxiety running, the fusion between the thought and the thinker. When you are anxious, your thoughts do not feel like thoughts. They feel like facts. They feel like reality. The thought something terrible is going to happen does not register as a prediction. It registers as a truth. Cognitive defusion creates distance between you and your thoughts by changing the relationship you have with them. One technique is labeling. Instead of thinking something terrible is going to happen, you say to yourself, "I am having the thought that something terrible is going to happen." That single structural shift changes the relationship. The thought is now an object you are observing, not a reality you are inside. Another technique is thanking your mind. When the anxiety thought appears, you say silently, "Thank you, mind. I notice you are trying to protect me." This is not sarcasm. It is an acknowledgement that the thought has a protective function, delivered in a way that does not reinforce the thought's authority. These feel strange at first. They are supposed to. The strangeness is the point. You are interrupting the automatic loop. Exercise 6. Behavioral activation. Anxiety contracts the world. It narrows what feels possible. It makes staying still feel safer than moving, even when staying still is making things worse. Behavioral activation is the deliberate practice of doing things regardless of how you feel about doing them, based on the understanding that mood follows action, not the other way around. Psychologist Peter Lewinsohn at the University of Oregon developed behavioral activation as a treatment for depression, and subsequent research by Christopher Martel and colleagues showed it to be as effective as cognitive therapy for both depression and anxiety. The mechanism is simple. When you engage in activities that are consistent with your values or that provide a sense of accomplishment, your brain releases dopamine and serotonin. The neurochemical environment changes, and the thought patterns that depend on the low activation state begin to lose their grip. The key is to choose the behavior before you feel like doing it. Not wait until the mood lifts. Go for the walk when you do not want to. Make the call when you are dreading it. The activation comes first. The relief follows. Exercise 7. Worry postponement. This is counterintuitive enough that it is worth explaining carefully. Worry postponement does not tell you to stop worrying. It tells you to schedule when you will worry. Clinical psychologist Thomas Borkovec at Penn State University spent 30 years studying generalized anxiety disorder and the role of worry in its maintenance. His research found that a significant portion of worrying is functionally recursive. You worry about the worry. You worry about how much you are worrying. The worry about worry consumes more cognitive resources than the original concern. Worry postponement interrupts this loop by giving the worry a designated container. When an anxious thought appears, you note it, you acknowledge it, and you tell yourself you will give it your full attention at a specific time, typically a 30-minute window in the late afternoon. When the worry time arrives, you sit down with the worry deliberately. You think about it, write about it, engage with it. What Borkovec's research consistently found was that when people arrived at the scheduled worry time, the majority of concerns felt significantly less urgent than they had when they first appeared. The urgency is part of the anxiety's mechanism. Removing the immediacy removes much of the power. Exercise 8. Gratitude and reappraisal. This exercise has accumulated more dismissal than almost any other in psychology, usually because it is presented badly, as though the instruction to think of 3 good things is a complete description of the practice. It is not. What the research actually shows, particularly the work of Robert Emmons at UC Davis and Martin Seligman at the University of Pennsylvania, is that deliberate, specific written gratitude practice, the kind where you describe not just what you are grateful for, but why it matters and what your life would look like without it, produces measurable neurobiological changes. It increases serotonin and dopamine. It reduces activity in the amygdala. It shifts the prefrontal cortex toward more positive valuation of incoming information. The reappraisal component matters equally. Reappraisal is the cognitive practice of asking what else this situation could mean. Not denying that something is difficult, but actively looking for alternative interpretations. Neuroscientist James Gross at Stanford University has shown that reappraisal, when practiced consistently, physically changes the patterns of activation in the prefrontal cortex, reducing the automatic threat weighting that anxiety applies to neutral or ambiguous information. 5 minutes. Pen and paper. Write specifically. The vagueness is where the practice loses its effect. Exercise 9. Sleep optimization. This is last on the list not because it is least important, but because it is the one most people are most resistant to accepting as a brain exercise. It does not feel like an exercise. It feels passive. It feels like simply not doing anything. It is not passive. During sleep, particularly during slow-wave deep sleep, the brain's glymphatic system activates, flushing metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours. During REM sleep, the emotional memory processing that Matthew Walker at UC Berkeley has documented extensively occurs. The brain reprocesses emotionally charged experiences in a neurochemical environment depleted of norepinephrine, the primary stress chemical, softening the emotional charge attached to difficult memories and experiences. What this means for anxiety is precise. A brain running on insufficient sleep has a hyperreactive amygdala, a weakened prefrontal cortex, and an impaired capacity to distinguish genuine threats from imagined ones. Sleep deprivation does not just make anxiety worse as a side effect. It is one of the primary drivers of anxious brain states. Every other exercise on this list becomes harder and less effective when the brain is underslept. 7 to 9 hours. Consistent timing. A dark, cool environment. These are not preferences. They are the maintenance conditions for the brain you are asking to regulate your anxiety. You are not at war with your brain. That is the most important thing to understand when you reach the end of this list. Your brain is trying to protect you. It has always been trying to protect you. The anxiety is not the enemy. It is a misfired alarm. And alarms, once you know how to reach the panel, can be reset. These 9 exercises are the panel. Start with 1. Practice it until it becomes available to you in the moments when you need it most. Then add another. Not because more is always better, but because different situations call for different tools. And the wider your repertoire, the less any single anxious moment has the power to overwhelm you. The brain that learned anxiety can unlearn it. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. Consistently. One reset at a time.